Gibson, we've got our originals, we've got our moderns. You've seen some of them, but there's some new stuff coming at you right now. Good things to come for Nashville, but also for the Gibson Garage.
What's up, guys? It's Jason here, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Rock and Roll Insight. One of the classic Beatles albums was simply entitled The White Album. One of the recordings was While My Guitar Gently Weeps. What a great song that was. A little bit of rock and roll trivia. The guitar solo on that album was provided by Eric Clapton. Clapton's choice of guitar brand to musically capture the mournfulness of this classic song was a Gibson Les Paul guitar. That particular original recording became a classic song, sung by a classical group, with the guitar instrumental played by a classic guitarist on a classic guitar. Gibson Brands is one of the most interesting and fascinating companies to me because the whole company faced a huge boom followed by a bust, where the brand was no longer relevant to millennials and the Gen Z audience anymore and went bankrupt. Even though the company has been staging a huge comeback in the past few years, stiff competition has been eating away. Today we'll explore the rise and fall of Gibson brand guitars and what will happen to Gibson in 2022. But before we begin, I need a quick favor from you. If you wouldn't mind just hitting that like button for the YouTube algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. As this is a brand new channel I just started this year, it helps me out a ton and it allows me to continue making great videos like this. Thanks for doing that, and now let's continue on with the Gibson Guitar comeback of 2022. Gibson guitar history. Let's step back in time. Unfortunately, even the most classic products representing the epitome of their craft are subjected to the ebb and flow of business dealings. Such was the case with Gibson Guitar, as described in a 2018 Company Man video that talked about the financial discord being experienced by this guitar company. One viewer of the video suggested that a follow-up video be produced as to what has become of Gibson Guitar Company. The video indicated that Gibson was in deep financial turmoil, so in response to the viewer, let the music play on. Just discovered this video because I play guitar, and Gibson is my favorite brand. Great video. Edit. I have an Epiphone, which is the cheaper version, but I want a real one someday. The cherry orange one. COVID has injected new life into the guitar. You may want to revisit this topic. Things have seemed to change for the better at Gibson, especially in Bozeman. They've had 66 years to design a nut for the Les Paul that's fit for purpose and they still failed. Sorry, but there's no excuse. A guitar costing this much should be perfect when it leaves the factory. It shouldn't be necessary to replace the nut. Broken strings at Gibson Guitar. Entertainment greats such as Pete Townsend, B.B. King, and Elvis Presley, even though offering different styles of singing and music genres, had many things in common. In addition to being wonderful, skillful musicians and entertainers in their own right, their choice of musical instrument was the Gibson Guitar. Gibson Guitar had a long and illustrious musical creative relationship with musicians since 1894 when it began creating guitars. Unfortunately, they played a few bad notes and most likely overextended themselves financially by acquiring other companies. Some of those purchases were Onkyo Audio Company in 2012 and TEAC in 2013, and Philips Home Entertainment System in 2014. Can you believe they even acquired Philips? These acquisitions were not necessarily poor business decisions, but certainly added to the burden of indebtedness for the company. But the business logic of expanding made sense at the time, even I admit, as people were moving away from guitars to online instruments and cheaper brands. When the reverberation of the final acquisition note was played, Gibson Guitar found themselves in debt to the tune of $500 million. To pay off their debt, as per Company Man, Gibson Guitar took out a few loans but also sold bonds. When the investment payment back to those who had purchased the bonds came due, Gibson was strapped for cash and was unable to fulfill its financial promise. In May of 2018, Gibson filed for Chapter 11 protection under the bankruptcy laws. As the bankrupt battle of the bands ensued, there were a number of restructuring options offered and the lawsuits from suppliers all played out. One major supplier was a German auto-tune software provider who filed a $60 million lawsuit. New sheet of music. Gibson Guitar Company can rightly claim as their theme song, "Rock and Roll is Here to Stay." However, their reprise could joyously be re-entitled, "Gibson Guitar Company is Here to Stay." In October of 2018, the restructuring plan for Gibson was approved by the Bankruptcy Court of Delaware. In addition was the demise of their CEO, Henry Yuskevich, who had served in that role since 1986. The search for a new lead guitarist, CEO, took place. The CEO search identified a leader who was working in the clothing manufacturing industry. Specifically, his leadership in the Levi Strauss Company in 2012 earned him a reputation of taking an iconic Americana classic brand and re-establishing them in the garment industry while rebuilding on its classic heritage and authenticity. If you haven't seen my video yet, check out the rise and fall of Levi's in 2022. In October of 2018, James J.C. Curley was named as the new member of the band. As CEO of Gibson, he pledged to lead them forward by going back to their musical roots and providing quality musical instruments to guitarists. In addition to his celebrated and successful reemergence of Levi Strauss, Curley is an actual guitarist and as such has a great appreciation for music and the role that the guitar plays. It seemed that this was a perfect blend to lead the guitar company back to the spotlight of guitar production. A guitar player with business acumen for reinvigorating fading businesses, or is it the other way around? A businessman with a flair for playing the guitar. The new Gibson Guitar 2.0. Nevertheless, in 2019, Gibson Guitar re-emerged after reinventing itself, and what better way to make an announcement about their comeback on the musical stage than to throw a guitarist's bash. In 2019, Gibson took to the stage at the NAMM conference in Anaheim. The comeback party included such musical guests as Peter Frampton, Robert Krieger, Black Pistol Fire, and other artists who had musical relationship with the Gibson Guitar. Added to the continuing party of their comeback was a Chuck Berry tribute that was held on March 12th of 2019. The bottom line and commitment of Gibson Guitar was that, like the prodigal musician, were returning to their musical roots of concentrating on their guitar production and their customers. 2019 proved to be a musical masterpiece for Gibson Guitar as they enjoyed a successful year after emerging from bankruptcy. In December of 2019 alone, 380 quality Gibsons were manufactured on a daily basis. And, adding to the continuing legend, where else would a successful musical production company be located? Gibson Guitar would relocate their music presence from Memphis to Nashville, Music City itself. An indicator of their success was soon reflected in the opening of downtown offices in Cummins Station. With the presence of their factory employing 350 to 400 workers and an additional employee complement of 120 in their custom shop, proved to be a significant positive business experience for Nashville and the company. Also, an acoustic guitar facility operated successfully in Montana. As the company was successfully reemerging, along came the showstopper known as COVID-19. It was decided for the safety of all concerned that the locations of Nashville and Bozeman, Montana would temporarily suspend operations. Gibson Guitar in 2022. Gibson Guitar is successfully playing along today. How do you think they fared during COVID in 2020 and 2021? Well, let me tell you this. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it appears that there was a stairway to heaven silver lining. People who had time on their hands decided to put their idle time to good use. A popular choice was learning how to play the guitar. Curley, Gibson Guitar CEO, has indicated that there has been an influx of new generation of guitarists. For the first time, more budding musicians have learned how to strum and finger chords on a guitar this past year than in the previous decade combined. Obviously, an increase in guitar interest is amplified into increased revenue. Now that is music to one's ears, especially for those in the guitar business, and specifically at Gibson Guitar. Gibson Guitar, over a 3-year period, 2013 to 2016, experienced a decline in revenue to the tune of falling from $2.1 billion to $1.7 billion. It's not a very catchy tune. In regards to 2021 actual sales and revenue, final numbers are not available. However, Curley stated that sales have steadily increased since August of 2020. Additionally, rising waters raise all boats, and Fender, major competitor of Gibson, reported annual sales of $700 million. This was a 17% increase in guitar sales for Fender. Insiders say Gibson's order book and sales backlog are now the largest in the company's history. Talk about a turnaround! I definitely expect this to continue going forward for Gibson in 2022. The Gibson Guitar Company is a musical success story. It is a classic story that parallels life in that wrong notes are played, but with practice and continuing to play through, they are part of the process. Gibson Guitar is no longer weeping.
So it's been a whirlwind year for all of us. I hope all of you are staying safe, but at the same time, start playing more guitar.
So, with that said, thank you so much for watching my video. There was a significant amount of research and guitar playing that went into making this video possible. If you haven't seen already, check out my video on the Harley-Davidson USA comeback of 2022, or how Judge Judy became one of the richest women in the world. Those are my personal favorites on my channel. I highly recommend both. As always, stay happy and healthy and stay tuned for another episode of Company Insight next week.